Welcome, welcome. In the next 21 minutes, we're going to take a look at the Baha'i faith, who its people are, how it started, what it's all about. 21 minutes, of course, isn't going to give us enough time to go into great depth, but we should be able to answer most of the questions that we anticipate came to your mind when you first heard of the Baha'i faith, and maybe some of those that will occur to you as you view this program. Most obviously, the Baha'i faith is a religion that seeks to unite the whole of humanity in all its glorious diversity, a religion that recognizes the essential and organic unity of the human race. Its sacred scriptures assert that, "Ye are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch." In another passage we are told, "Deal ye one with another with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship." The Baha'is are the most diverse group of people on the planet. They come from every race, religious tradition, country, class, and culture on Earth. In 2001, they completed a monument to unity and world peace on Mount Carmel in the Holy Land, a land that is currently one of the most war-torn places on Earth. Yet it is here that they built 19 beautiful gardens with 19 fountains from the bottom to the top of that mountain. CBS News featured this monument as the one symbol of peace and hope in the Middle East. Others have called it the eighth wonder of the world. The Baha'is built this themselves as a gift to the world. You may be thinking that the Baha'i faith sounds like it has some people in it who are dedicated to a good cause. It does. Some 6 million of them. You've already been introduced to one central belief, that all of humanity is one family, a noble family that is rich beyond measure in its diversity. Baha'is also believe that there is only one God, and that He is as unknowable to us as we are to a grain of sand. It is this utter and complete mystery, this incomprehensibility of our Creator, that accounts for the myriad concepts of Him across different cultures and times. It follows then that if there is only one God, then there is really only one religion, one faith that has been revealed in stages down through the ages as mankind's capacity for understanding has increased. In order to live by these precepts, Baha'is strive to appreciate the diversity and nobility of every member of the human family. They struggle every day to eliminate all forms of prejudice within themselves. Rather than be afraid of people who are different, Baha'is are encouraged to embrace them and to consider themselves as world citizens. Of course, Baha'is recognize that while humanity may be one big family, it appears to be a pretty dysfunctional one at the moment. It's divided by religious rivalries and what we call race, which is really little more than differences in skin color. We all know that the origins of the human race started somewhere in northern Africa or the Middle East. Scientific investigation has conclusively shown that our different skin tones are the result of these early peoples migrating to different climates. Prior to the airplane and automobile, these groups were separated by oceans, mountains, rivers, and great distances. It was natural for each group to think of itself as superior. But the world has literally become a neighborhood. We have instant communication with almost every part of the world and can travel to almost any place on it in less time than it takes the Earth to make a single rotation on its axis. This closeness has demonstrated conclusively that we are far more alike than different, and that none of us is inherently superior to the other. Baha'is believe that God sent divine messengers to each group of people in the human family at different times and in different places. Each brought both a universal message and a unique one for that time and place. None of these divine teachers denied the validity of the ones that came before. Here you see a list of the major divine teachers of whom we have a record in human history. If we think of God as the sun, these divine teachers are like the rays of sunlight, flooding humanity's many-colored flowers with life-giving and sustaining light. You have probably heard of most of these teachers. The two new ones for today are the Bab and Bahá'u'lláh. They both lived in Persia about 160 years ago. Bahá'u'lláh taught that these divine messengers are like teachers in school. They all have the same knowledge, but each of them has a different purpose, a different mission, just as a first-grade teacher knows algebra, but doesn't teach it to his students because they aren't ready for it yet. They need to learn arithmetic first. In the same way, each of the divine teachers tailored his message to the age in which he appeared. Each one revealed a vision to humanity. Abraham brought the vision of one God at a time when people believed in many gods. Moses expanded the vision to include laws of God. Jesus brought the vision of love and salvation. Muhammad added submission to the will of God. Just as your high school teacher didn't deny your first or second or fifth grade teachers, none of God's divine teachers denied the previous ones. In the same way that a person grows from childhood to adulthood, humanity's capacity to organize itself in greater degrees of unity has advanced with the message and vision of each divine teacher. Today, we have the capacity and the means to organize ourselves in the highest degree of unity, global unity. The Bab, which means the gate, was a young man who in 1844 proclaimed that he was a divine messenger at a time of great religious fervor and expectation in the Islamic world, and indeed in the Christian world as well. The Bab said that his mission was to prepare people for the coming of another messenger, much greater than himself. In a superficial way, it was similar to the role that John the Baptist played to prepare people for the coming of Jesus of Nazareth. Except that the Bab brought a new revelation, a new religion, and was himself a divine messenger like Moses or Jesus or Muhammad. In just a few years, over 100,000 people in Persia accepted his teachings. Just as previous messengers were opposed, the Bab was faced with bitter opposition by the religious and political leaders of Persia, and, like Jesus, he was killed, as were over 20,000 of his followers. Here you see something that is a great blessing to mankind, a sample of the Bab's teachings written in his own hand, bearing his seal. Humanity was not left, as in past ages, with only an oral tradition of the divine messenger's teachings that were written down many years or even centuries later. The original documents themselves still exist and are preserved in archives at the World Center of the Baha'i Faith. Several of his books have been translated into English and many other languages. An example of his writings is this prayer that Baha'is like to say in times of difficulty. Is there any remover of difficulties save God? Say, Praise be God, He is God. All are His servants, and all abide by His bidding. A few years after the Bab was killed, Bahá'u'lláh, which means the glory of God, identified himself as not only the one whom the Bab had foretold, but the promised one of all religions. As a follower of the Bab, he had been imprisoned, tortured, and banished from Persia to Baghdad in Iraq. With his announcement, he was, through a series of further banishments, finally exiled to the prison city of Akka in the Holy Land, where he spent the rest of his life as a religious prisoner of the Ottoman Empire. Yet, wherever he was sent, the people came to love and revere him, even his guards. When Baha'u'lláh was exiled to Baghdad, for instance, the people had been told he was the enemy of God and that he should be treated with the utmost cruelty. After being forced to walk through the mountains in the middle of winter without adequate food or clothing, he calmly walked through the center of Baghdad. The people, who had been intent on stoning him, found their hearts so moved by his spiritual power that they bowed their heads to the ground as he walked by. In all, Baha'u'lláh spent 40 years as an exile and a prisoner, dying in 1892 in a house the governor of Akka had pleaded with him to go to, despite the fact that the decree for his imprisonment in the city had never been repealed. During these years of imprisonment and exile, he wrote over 100 volumes, revealing and explaining his teachings. The total volume of his authenticated writings is some 70 times that of the Bible. Like the Bab's writings, these too are preserved in the archives of the Baha'i World Center. Many have been translated into over 100 languages. Baha'u'llah's teachings span the gamut of human endeavor, understanding, and interaction. Among them are, "My first counsel is this: possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart, that thine may be a sovereignty ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. Noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself. Rise then unto that for which thou wast created." He wrote this affirming that we are not born in sin. "The best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. Turn not away therefrom if thou desirest me, and neglect it not, that I may confide in thee. By its aid thou shalt see with thine own eyes, and not through the eyes of others, and shalt know of thine own knowledge, and not through the knowledge of thy neighbor. Ponder this in thy heart, how it behooveth thee to be. Verily, justice is my gift to thee, and the sign of my loving kindness. Set it then before thine eyes." In several passages, he points out the economic problems of the world have spiritual solutions. At the core of this teaching is that work performed in the spirit of service is a form of worship. Women and men have been and will always be equal in the sight of God. This teaching goes even further, asserting, when all mankind shall receive the same opportunity of education, and the equality of men and women be realized, the foundations of war will be utterly destroyed. "I have made death a messenger of joy to thee. Wherefore dost thou grieve?" assures us that the soul continues after death. In many passages, he emphasizes that the family is the foundation of human society. Living a moral life, he points out many times, directly influences our spiritual happiness and development. Trial and error can teach us that stealing has negative consequences, for example, but embracing the morality that God's messengers teach avoids a great many problems. The short answer is yes. Baha'u'lláh provided, as no divine messenger before him, for his faith to remain free of schism. In the past, religions splintered over who should interpret the teachings and lead the followers of the faith's founder, because there was no clear, inarguable appointment of a successor. Baha'u'lláh appointed his son, Abdul-Baha, as his successor in clear and unmistakable terms, in writing. Specifically, Abdul-Baha was appointed as the interpreter of Baha'u'llah's writings and the center of his covenant. He also established unequivocally that each individual was free to interpret his writings for him or herself, but had no right to demand that their interpretation be accepted as correct and authoritative. Only Abdul-Baha was given that authority. Abdul-Baha was the first to recognize his father's station, well before Baha'u'lláh made it known publicly. He spent his life with his father, suffering imprisonment and banishment, yet felt great joy every moment because he had been given the capacity to fully understand and put into practice Baha'u'llah's teachings. In fact, Baha'u'lláh called him the perfect exemplar, the perfect example of how to live. Abdu'l-Baha lived until 1921, having traveled to Europe and America to spread his father's teachings after being freed from prison in 1908. There are literally hundreds of stories about his life that teach us how to love God, ourselves, and others unconditionally, just as he did. In accordance with his father's teachings, Abdu'l-Baha left a will appointing his grandson Shoghi Effendi as his successor and the guardian of the Baha'i faith. Because the Baha'i faith has no clergy, Shoghi Effendi's primary task was to build the administrative structure of the faith according to the system that Baha'u'lláh had set out in his writings. He spent the next 36 years of his life until his passing in 1957, establishing a unique worldwide administrative system. In almost every culture on earth, people are trained from birth to compete, to seek power. A good example of a power-based organization is the military. Everyone's goal is to climb the corporate ladder to assume power over those below. This basic structure is used in virtually every organization in the world, be it religious, business, educational, or even a neighborhood association. Baha'u'lláh turned this concept on its head. In his system, assemblies of 9 people are elected without nominations or campaigning, without doing anything at all to seek election. None of the assembly members have any personal power. They make decisions as a group of equals utilizing Baha'i consultation, in which each person contributes an idea and then gives up that idea to the group, trusting that the group genius will arrive at the best decision. An essential part of this process is to consult the Baha'i writings to find the guidance that Baha'u'lláh, Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi left for us. The group then decides on the best course of action to take in the particular situation under discussion. Giving up one's ownership of an idea is not an easy thing to do, and this form of consultation takes study and practice, but it has proven itself in every culture and at every level of administration of the faith, from small village assemblies through national assemblies to the International Assembly, the Universal House of Justice. Interestingly, non-Baha'i organizations are beginning to see the wisdom of this approach to group decision-making and incorporating its principles into their own decision-making processes. Baha'u'lláh came to re-establish morality in the world. His laws aren't for God's well-being. He isn't affected by our decisions in any way. They are for our benefit and protection. Breathe not the sins of others, so long as thou art thyself a sinner. This speaks to the most important law, which is to avoid fault-finding, backbiting, and gossip. This and his other laws all support the greatest teaching, unconditional love for our fellow man. Love one another as I have loved you, Jesus told us. Baha'u'lláh reiterated this many times in his writings. The following laws assist us to love others unconditionally. Obedience to them is between God and each individual. Baha'is know that the only person an individual can really change is him or herself. Pray and read the holy writings daily. This brings us joy and transforms our lives. Observe the Baha'i fast from March 2nd to 20th. The fast lasts from sunup to sundown each day. This, like prayer and reading the holy writings, feeds and purifies our souls. Teach the cause of God. Contribute to the Baha'i Fund. Observe Baha'i holy days. Avoid alcoholic drinks and non-medicinal drugs. Observe the Baha'i marriage laws. Baha'is request the permission of their parents before marrying to strengthen family unity. Respect and obey the government. While we are encouraged to exercise our right to vote, we are to avoid participation in partisan politics. We're sure you have more questions, but they can be answered most effectively by sitting down with a Baha'i. If you were given this DVD by someone, please get in touch with them and arrange a time to talk some more about the faith. If you don't know a Baha'i, call this number, 800-22-UNITE, to be put in touch with a Baha'i in your area. We also invite you to visit the official U.S. Baha'i website, www.baha'i.us, and or the international website, www.baha'i.org, for more information. We leave you with this thought from the writings of Bahá'u'lláh. The utterance of God is a lamp whose light is these words, Ye are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch. Deal ye one with another with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship. He who is the day star of truth beareth me witness. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth.